Hello, Kevin.
Hello.
So many of the shows that you're making at Lionsgate Television are huge hits overseas. Mad Men, of course, and more recently Orange is the New Black, which is the most watched show on Netflix in France and Germany. I don't know if you know that. Ted Sarandos just told us.
Thank you.
I just wonder, how do you factor in the international market when you conceive a show?
Well, for us, it's huge. We have to recover a sizable deficit on any of the scripted shows that we develop and sell, and without the international markets, we really can't make them. So really, before anything gets out the door from us pitching, we need to have a feel internationally that we think it will work. What you just saw, Royals, we have high hopes and expectations for. Feels international, also should work very nicely for E, who is our commissioning network in the US. But certain shows we can't ever really get behind, because the international won't be there. So for us, it's all part of the same global picture that we have to look at when we analyze a show.
But for example, Mad Men, did you expect it to do so well? Or
No.
Orange is the New Black? I mean,
No,
those shows
no.
are really grounded in American culture. How did you...
I think both of those were, going into them, we weren't entirely sure. But we were relying on just how good the shows were, the high quality and discriminating audiences around the world, but a much slower trajectory in terms of where Mad Men began and then where it is now, both on AMC and also internationally. But it takes some time. You need a couple of seasons for people to hear about the show, maybe, hopefully, some awards, Golden Globes, Emmys, SAG, and then people catch up. So we have a pretty good idea of those kinds of shows as well. Our estimates start out a little bit lower, and hopefully we exceed estimates. Orange is the New Black, we had high hopes for, because Jenji Kohan, who created the show, had also created and executive produced Weeds for us. And Weeds did very well internationally, and her taste, her comedic and dramatic sensibilities seemed to work around the world. So we had something to look at that had performed previously. So we felt strong about that internationally, and I think it's worked for us and for Netflix.
Weeds, you expected to do well in international markets?
I thought Weeds would do well. At that time, a very successful drama on FX was called Nip Tuck, all about plastic surgery and Americans' obsession with body imagery. And Weeds took on a similar subject of the drug culture and the war on drugs, which is kind of a specific American obsession. And people like to laugh at us. We laugh at ourselves a little bit, and they laugh with us and at us, and that seemed to work. It's also kind of a funny, sexy show, and that seems to travel.
So a lot of European pay TV groups nowadays are investing in English language, kind of high-profile series, Canal Plus, for example. I just wonder, are you interested in partnering up with a foreign pay TV
for sure.
group one day?
We're talking to all of the networks all the time. We would love to find the perfect show to co-commission, or to commission simply for a French or UK or German pay market. Absolutely high priority for us. And the fact that some of them are doing English speaking makes it a little easier for us to find the right writers and actors that can come across the pond and do something. Absolutely, I think it's a great trend.
And are you interested in also in maybe European talent, from Scandinavia, for example, has a great talent pool. Are you looking into those areas for
all the
talent?
time? We're looking. We have formats. We've optioned many formats, working with different Scandinavian companies and talent. Always looking for the right thing to adapt, and likewise things that we have in the U.S. that we can export as formats as well. So
can you mention maybe some of the formats or talents?
We have many formats. So we have Weeds and Nurse Jackie and Boss, and there's a lot of interest in the Mad Men format in certain markets.
Like with what market, for example?
Latin America, Israel, UK. There's a long list of people that are interested in doing those kind of shows, and when we find the right home, we pounce on it, obviously.
And maybe from Scandinavia, some talent you're interested in?
Well, we're always interested. We have we have a project based on a Joe Nesbo book called Headhunters, and a very successful movie of the same name. That we've optioned. It started as a film project at Lionsgate. Now it's a TV project. We're pretty excited about that. We're interested in a lot of the kind of comedic talent as well. We are doing something with the Ilves brothers of What Does the Fox Say fame. We're going to do something with them. And as people come in, we meet with them all.
Okay, great. So you've played a key role in branding networks in the US, for example, AMC with Mad Men, and more recently, Netflix with Orange is the New Black. How is that working for you? What's the advantage of that strategy?
Well, when you get involved with a network that's either new to scripted or rebranding, it's really good as the supplier of hopefully the hit show. If it works, they support it even more than they might a normal show. In the case of Mad Men, AMC really built a lot of their marketing for the network around Mad Men. In fact, a lot of the color schemes of the AMC network logos were similar to the Mad Men logos. And we've had a great run, and we're about to finish out our final 7 episodes starting in January of the series. And economically, it's been beneficial for us and for them. We've had similar success with Weeds at Showtime. We have a hit show on Hulu called Deadbeat.
Yes.
We've got a really great show on ABC Family called Chasing Life. We did their first scripted show 7 or 8 years ago called Wildfire, and that worked for them, and they kept us in mind when we sold them this new show. That worked out well. So we like that, and Orange is the New Black for Netflix obviously worked out nicely also, and we hope to be the first for a lot of buyers. We also have a lot of repeat business. We have Nurse Jackie at Showtime when we did Weeds there also. So they feel pretty good about you if you're delivering a hit, and then they ask you to bring more.
And can you tell us, streaming services are obviously playing a really big role today in scripted original.
Yeah.
How does it compare dealing with a streaming service like Netflix and a network like AMC? What's the experience like?
One is ad-supported, AMC, so you're working with a network that's selling to advertisers. It has a certain group of standards that it has to hit. It has act breaks, and a running time of 42, 43 minutes for a drama. And streaming partners, they have no advertising obligations whatsoever. The restrictions are pretty free. And they also have a much longer running time and no breaks. Specifically in Orange is the New Black, the storytelling is very different. Genji's taking a lot of digressions on episodes that go left or right, that sometimes you forget about the main through line because they're focusing in on one cast member. And because people are going to go back and watch a whole season, go back, you have a lot of freedom to tell stories in a much more serialized, novelized fashion that isn't pushing you to have a really dramatic ending to every scene before the commercial break to make sure people come back. So the pacing and the rhythm is really different, and it's been interesting from our standpoint to adjust as well. Obviously, we're just on the sidelines cheering on the writers to do a great job, but your instincts about what will hold an audience have to adjust. They also air or release everything on one day, and thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people watched 13 episodes in 13 hours that night, and the next day they're waiting for the third season. It's going to take 1 year before they see it again. So that's a little different. And when you're talking about it with other fans, no one knows exactly how far along they are, so no one wants to give away anything. So the traditional experience of every Monday coming into work and talking about what happened last night on The Sopranos is not happening in that case.
But in terms of creative freedom, for example, I've heard that Netflix is really hands-off.
Well, I mean, Netflix is banking on experienced creators, filmmakers, people that have a track record. It actually kind of dovetails into their entire algorithm. They're interested in things that already have some value to their customer base. So if you look at House of Cards, it's Kevin Spacey, who has dozens and dozens of films. David Fincher, dozens and dozens of films. A British format that was already successful on Netflix. There's a lot of ways in for them. In the case of Orange is the New Black, it had fewer film elements, but it had Genji, and Weeds had already been a big success on their service. But one of the reasons that they're saying yes to Genji or David Fincher and Beau Willimon and that whole group, was because they're already pretty good at what they do. So they're not taking as many chances on first-time TV writers or showrunners.
That a network would take?
That a network, by definition, who has to do much more. And a network is churning out many, many more series so far than Netflix is doing. So they have to be inherently, maybe take a few more risks. They make many more pilots. Many of them don't go past pilot. There's a lot more research and development that's going on in the network environment. Netflix is very targeted, picking things that they already know should work. By definition, I don't think they would ever go into a process being micromanagers because they're buying the success that people have already brought in. Great for us, really good for the writers. I think if you ask anybody that's worked with them, they've had a great experience and felt supported creatively, but not micromanaged.
But maybe a network wouldn't be, I mean, I feel like streaming services like Netflix are more enthusiastic about really edgy concepts. For example, Orange is the New Black. Do you think you could have sold it to a network?
Well, probably not a broadcast network, maybe ad-supported cable, but it would be different by definition, the storytelling that we talked about. I mean, the SVOD premium subscription services are in the pay cable universe. They're delivered in a different way, but they have to deliver on premium, and premium kind of has to make you rationalize why you pay $10 to $15 a month for it in order to say, I want to watch that. So by definition, those shows are going to be harder edged. They'll have more nudity, more sexual content, more provocative situations, because if you could get that on any other service, you might ask yourself, why am I paying for this?
Yes.
So they, you know, it's unwritten, but they, by definition, push the envelope. And all of them do that, whether it's HBO, Showtime, Netflix, Starz, Hulu, Amazon, they all go that way. And that's one of the reasons that people say yes to paying.
And in terms of production budget, how do they compare? Streaming services versus networks?
They're comparable with their premium competitors, the HBOs and Showtimes and Stars of the world. They're in that same kind of set of shows budgetarily.
Can you give us like a range?
A range, it's high. I will say that.
Like Orange is the New Black, for example.
Orange is the New Black. It's an expensive show. It's well produced and it costs a lot to make. That's the range I'm going to give you. But worth every penny.
But isn't it more interesting for you guys to sell a show territory by territory rather than dealing with a multi-territory, you know,
well,
like
you know
Netflix?
what? We at Lionsgate, we call ourselves the Switzerland of television because we sell to everyone and we can partner with anyone. We do co-productions, we do license fees, we work, you know, buyer by buyer in very unique ways. Our COO, Sandra Stern, is an amazing deal maker, and we have to service our clients, and we can't give them a blueprint and say this has to work for you because we want it to be that way. Everybody is different. Netflix is a different model than Amazon, is a different model than Hulu, which is different than AMC, HBO, ABC, NBC. So we stay pretty flexible. Obviously, the more rights a studio can hold on to, the better long-term. Studios are valued on their library and the revenue that library throws off if they were at a standing start. And we want to hold on to as many rights as possible. But in this evolving media universe, sometimes that's not always possible. And it's also a measure of how much risk you or the buyer are willing to take. And sometimes a buyer wants to share some of that risk as a co-production partner and contribute on the equity side. And if the deal's right, we'll certainly be open to doing that. And we've done that before. And that's worked out pretty well for us also.
What do you think about the model of European groups like Gaumont International Television, for example, which is dealing with, you know, selling shows, skipping the pilot stage?
Right.
Is that
well, look, I mean, we're big believers in the straight-to-series model. We've done a lot of it, and more of it's happening. Frankly, a lot of the streaming buyers and/or emerging cable players are looking at the economics of pilots, and they're seeing that it doesn't really pencil out for them. And you know, we're focused on at all times on getting things out of development and into production. So a straight-to-series model is pretty attractive. But we also work in very traditional methods as well. The Royals was a script and then a pilot. The pilot succeeded. They made a couple of casting adjustments between pilot and series, the traditional way. It will premiere on E in March of 2015. We're here selling it around the world. It's turned out pretty great. It's a license. It is as traditional a model as you could ever dial up for a television show. Manhattan, which we do for WGN America with Skydance, our partners, was a straight script to series deal. A script and kind of a Bible committed to then 13 episodes produced, which we're selling around the world. And in the US, Hulu is the SVOD partner who comes in very quickly, one day in the first season, one day after it's on WGN. It's available on Hulu Plus. And that's worked out pretty well for everybody. Yesterday, the show was renewed for a second season. And that is a little closer to the Gaumont model, let's say, although originating in the US, but we think that's a really smart model. And we support it. We'd like to have more of that business ourselves. And I think more and more networks are going to go down that road, looking again at the economics of pilots and how much money is spent on pilots versus getting right to series. It's not for everybody. And certain shows really require a pilot more than others. But
like
this new kind of serialized storytelling, if you were going to put Breaking Bad and Mad Men and Masters of Sex and other shows into a category, these are highly serialized, novelistic approaches to series. And the old model of a procedural crime show in which everything had to go in the pilot so you could figure out if you wanted to buy it or not don't really apply. Plenty of characters in these shows don't even make their way into the first episode. They show up halfway through and maybe take the series in a completely different direction, like a novel. That you only understand when you've seen 13 scripts or you're making it. And frankly, you have time in that way to adjust the show to things that are working that you see on the screen. And that's also unique and different. So I think you'll see more and more of it.
Can you tell us about your presence in Asia? What's happening in Asia?
Well, as a company, Lionsgate is building an Asian business. We've been in the channel business with Tigergate, Celestial Tiger, it's had a couple of different names, over the last 5 years on a joint venture on channels. We have a Hong Kong office. We're pushing into India pretty aggressively. Shows like Mad Men and Orange is the New Black are on Youku, which is an SVOD service in China. All of that represents huge revenue growth for us, which before was pretty close to
zero.
Nothing.
Yes.
So it's incremental in a way, but very promising. The theatrical side of the company is pretty deep into discussions about bringing more films into Asia, both produced there and our own films. Some of our bigger ones obviously go into China, Hunger Games, Twilight, Divergent, movies like that. And we're developing a couple of shows that could find their way into production in Asia now. It's a priority for the company, but it's an emerging market for us that we obviously have a long way to go in terms of getting a strong handle on, but we're focused on it.
But you've grown the business at Lionsgate Television tremendously in the last 10 years. I think it went from 8 million to 500 million in sales.
Well, yes, it did. It's been more than 8 years, I have to confess. But I've been there a long time, the company has grown on two trajectories. John Feltheimer and Michael Burns joined the company in 2000. John became CEO. Michael's the vice chairman. They really started building aggressively the film and home entertainment side by buying and acquiring companies. So Trimark, Artisan, Mandate, Summit, all the way along, which has really built our film business in a huge way. TV was kind of quietly growing one show at a time, but it really kind of really kicked into a faster growth trajectory as the company got bigger on the other side. As I mentioned, Sandra Stern joined the company.
Yes.
Chris Selleck, who runs our development and all the creative on the TV side. Peter Iacono, who came over from ITV, previously Sony. Jim Packer from MGM. It's been built over time, brick by brick, to now a very formidable team. Happily, we have product that is giving everybody something to sell. And the cable and streaming markets have exploded.
Just exploded. Now it's streaming services exploding. Where do you think the next big growth
well, I think there's going to be many more streaming players than there are today. You know, in 2 years sitting here, it'll be 6 or 7 legitimate streaming players as opposed to 3 or 4, and maybe even more than that. The barriers to entry in that business are very low. Obviously, everybody needs financing to start services, but on a pay basis, you don't need that many subscribers to kind of get you to break even if they're willing to pay $5 or $10 a month for a product. And it's fairly easy to launch without the overhead associated with even cable, which was considered, you know, lean compared to broadcast, which is considered very labor intensive to have stations in cities across the country or around the world, the broadcast model. So you're going to see more and more of that. You're going to see big brands jumping into that, I think.
Are you interested in like brands, for example, really playing a role in the content?
Well, I think so. I think the brands are going to follow where the audiences lie. If traditional 30 and 60-second commercials are, you know, a little less popular, or, you know, amongst many alternatives for advertisers, they're going to want to get inside shows that people are talking about, and a lot of those shows are going into these streaming and premium environments. And, you know, on the premium side, you know, there's the big contenders, HBO, Showtime, that are kind of there and have big presences in the US. There's a lot of new players, and one thing they need more than anything is marketing muscle. And they don't really have access because they don't have regular television channels to push their product the way networks do. So I think there's going to be some brand involvement on kind of on a quid pro quo basis, which is, you know, some brand wants to get in on a show. There's no commercials, but maybe they'll present, and in exchange, perhaps they will popularize that streaming service that's trying to get a foothold in the business at their retail outlets or wherever they're marketing to their direct consumers. That seems like a pretty easy fit for the right shows and the right brands. Not everything's going to be right, but we certainly have a whole bunch of brands that love Orange is the New Black, calling us all the time about licensing products or doing promotions. And I'm sure some of those will find traction, and we'll discuss with Netflix and see what's possible.
But I think that, I mean, since you started 16 years ago at Lionsgate Television, it's gotten so much more competitive. I mean, today you have companies, you know, from Europe coming to, you know, set base in LA and developing shows with US talent. How do you see that competition? How do you stand out?
Well, I think it's healthy. How do you stand out? I mean, you stand out by continuing to focus on great creative and making sure that the shows that you're pitching and selling, you would want to watch yourself in addition to just getting behind and pushing. I think you make your company as a studio a safe place for creators who will want to come back again and again and again, and create kind of a nice cushion between them and the buyer, and a place where they can really explore their vision. I think you monetize their content in a way that is lucrative for them, so that they can do what they love, but also make a lot of money doing it in success. Lionsgate has a long track record of doing that in both the film and the TV side with our partners. We've always advocated betting on ourselves and talent betting on themselves for a bigger back end instead of a bigger upfront. So I think we'll continue to do that, and that's a pretty attractive model. I think we've got a really robust film business, and a lot of the people on our film side are interested in television.
Between the film
so we're
and TV.
In meetings all the time. Our film team is incredibly supportive of what we do and bring us a lot of opportunities, and vice versa. I think we bring them some pretty interesting talent as well. And the world is shrinking in that regard. And I think we're pushing on the digital side, and that's probably a next big chapter of growth for all the companies that are in the content game.
So can you tell us, just to finish up, some plot details on the 3rd season of Orange is the New Black?
No, I can tell you no plot details. No, just rest assured it'll be great. It'll be as good or better than the first 2 seasons, and it'll be great. The only problem is we have to wait so long because everyone's seen everything.
What about the final season of Mad Men? Are we going to be, because the ending is so important in the legacy of a show, right? I mean, you just have to like make it good.
Well, I can only say that I haven't seen anything, and I probably won't see anything until it airs because I'll be too tempted to talk about it. But it's great. We're really excited about the show. It's been a great run, and I'm sure Matt will send it off in a big way that is fitting with the great content that he's created for 7 seasons.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Sure. My pleasure. Thank you.